finance their education and how to afford college from earlier on, right? So that's why we wanted to go ahead and extend that invitation and open it this year for our juniors as well. Show of hands, senior parents. Okay, and then juniors, so it's about half and half. That's great. When you walked in, and if you don't get it now at the beginning, don't worry about it. We're going to go ahead and make sure you do get it at the end. It is a copy of Show Me the Money. There's a lot of resources there, scholarships, databases, newsletters that we have for our students here at Christopher Columbus that we've curated for you all. So this is a great opportunity. This is all, you're going to get homework from Mr. Christopher Magnin tonight, so don't worry about it, but that is something that we are also providing for you all today. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you all Mr. Christopher Magnin. I've known Chris for a couple, more than 5-6 years already. I met Chris at the University of Miami while I worked there, and in the admission office, and of course in the financial aid office. Chris is an expert in the field. He is so well renowned within our community that I booked this session last year on October 4th. I remember very vividly. And as soon as the session is over tonight, I will go ahead and book him for next year because he gets busy. So we'll have another session again next year. Again, relevant things as well that just kind of transpire throughout the year. Chris, take it away.
Thank you so very much. What an introduction. I really appreciate that. She's awesome. We're very sad to see her go, but over the last couple of years, we've been working together here. I'm very happy to see what she's created here. Welcome. My name is Chris Magnin. I have long title, Senior Advisor for Financial Literacy Education and Outreach, and the Director of our Money Management Program at the University of Miami, which is a personal finance education program that we offer for free to all of our canes. If he has videographers, I'm going to keep moving, sorry. I focused on him. I'm only joking. But I wear a lot of hats at the university. I don't know why that just happened. Something just went
It's Wednesday. Wednesdays we restart our computers.
8 days. Great.
So if she puts on
I had this happen in the middle of a live Zoom session to 300 people, and my computer on my side started counting down. Your computer is resetting in 30 seconds, 29. And I'm like, what do? I'm right in the middle of this thing. I'm just going to pretend I got hit by lightning. And I did. I'm like, I had a power surge. Jumped right back into the presentation. It only took 2 minutes to restart my computer. Oh, it just flowed. They were like, in a panic. I was texting the advisor at the school and everything, and they were in full-on panic mode, thinking they lost me halfway through the presentation. You know how you get those reminders that it's going to happen at 7 o'clock at night, and you just keep pushing it off like that right now. But then when the countdown started right in the middle of my presentation, you talk about being in panic for me. I'm like, I can't speak fast enough to get the next half an hour of presentation in 30 seconds. But I'm glad and thankful for being here. I'm glad and thankful that you are all here. Again, I am the father of 2. I will be sharing some of my personal experiences with financial aid and my professional experiences with financial aid. I've been in higher ed my whole career in all different aspects of higher education. But as Ms. Martinez has said, I've been turning away more schools than I present at because I guess they have some reputation for knowing what I'm talking about or something along those lines. I'm going to share my knowledge today. Do you want to learn something today? I would think yes. All right, let's jump into it. Who can name our mascot? Sebastian. Does anybody know where Sebastian got his name? Ooh, all right, that's deep trivia. 1957, San Sebastian Hall. A bunch of students created the first costume for Sebastian, and it got named after them. Now you can say that some random weird trivia thing. I used to be an educator for the University of Miami in their new staff orientation for many years. When people started at the U, they got to meet me. This was my first day at the U. Today we're going to talk about financial aid. Done talking about myself. I work out of the Office of Student Financial Assistance and Employment, which is affectionately known as the Financial Aid Office, but we also oversee student employment. I am going to talk about student employment opportunities at schools as well, and this is not a UN presentation. This is relating to any school or college that your children are looking to attend or are thinking about in the future if you are the parents of juniors. Some of the agenda items, we're going to talk about some basic financial aid principles that we get from the Department of Education. We're going to talk about how to apply for financial aid, all the different major financial aid programs that exist, both from the government, from the university standpoint, from the state of Florida, the Bright Future Scholarship Program, the Florida prepaid tuition plans, how you can use them, where you can use them, and unique things about how they relate to each other. We're going to talk about the financial aid process. How many people have heard of a CSS profile application? All right, you're all going to know what a CSS profile application is soon. I saw Iris in the back, she raised her hand. That's good. A lot of schools, especially the Ivy League schools and high-end private schools, use a supplemental application in addition to what's called the FAFSA. How many people have heard of a FAFSA? All right, every hand just went up. Fantastic. I'll talk about both of them, and I'm going to discuss and cover some changes that have happened to the FAFSA form. Not only is it delayed, which you've all heard about that, if you're a senior parent, it's delayed for the fall of 2024. But some schools are adapting to new deadlines. Some schools who use CSS profile applications are using the CSS profile initially to figure out financial aid. And I'm going to cover all of that and how it works and what you all need to do. Like Iris had said, there's some homework beyond today as it relates to what you're going to get your students doing. Not so much what you have to do, although you are going to be a part of the financial aid process if you do apply for need-based aid, and help give them guidance. And I'm going to help provide you with some guidance that you can pass along to them. We're going to talk about I will talk about how schools determine financial need. It's not an algebraic equation. There's no trigonometry or calculus and that kind of thing. It's simple math. We're going to talk about some timelines as to what should be happening when, and how it varies from school to school. What the student should be doing right now. There are some things that should be happening like right now. We're at the beginning of the scholarship season. We're at the beginning of the application season for applying for financial aid, the common applications. For seniors, how many of your children already submitted their common application? All right, we got a couple of them, awesome. But in the next, how many weeks do you think they're going to be submitting their common application? What, 1, 2, 3 weeks? Depending on how they're applying for admission at their schools of choice. And then we'll talk a little bit about our personal finance program and how I think it's critically important at the high school and college level, and how we offer it for free at UM. And I hope that if your student attends a school that does offer a free personal finance education program, that they take advantage of it. How many of you wish you started investing when you were 18, 19 years old? All right. How many of you wish you had a personal finance education when you were 18, 19 years old? Yeah, you start thinking about back to that time. I was back then, I think I was collecting credit cards. It was a hobby for me. Remember when you could get credit cards just for being a college student way back in the day? Maybe I'm dating myself and I'm older than a couple of you, but or a bunch of you. Yeah, this is critically important in higher ed. It's critically important for the success of our young individuals, our young adults, because yes, your seniors are about to be adults and take on adulting things which relate to some of the things we're going to be talking about today. All right, this from the Department of Education. You start wondering, all right, how do schools determine financial need? We use a little calculation, which I'll show you in a little bit, but we rely on the FAFSA form and or the CSS profile application to give us a number. It's what they calculate as to what they think you can contribute towards the education of the student throughout their first year in college. And this just got louder. That was weird. And I'm going to talk about the FAFSA form, what they look at, but to the extent, and then you can see this is from the Department of Education. Parents and families have the primary responsibility to cover the cost of a college education for students. But there are a lot of resources available to you all. How many of you want to pay full price for tuition fees in college? No, all right, because that's why you're here. But when we start figuring out what students are eligible for in relation to need-based aid, and I know some of you are not going to be applying for need-based aid, and we cover every type of financial aid, including merit, scholarships, state aid, every type of financial aid in this presentation. But students, when they're doing their FAFSA form, parents, when you're adding your portion to the FAFSA form, or when you're doing a CSS profile application, they're going to ask about income, assets, household size, things like that, when they're calculating out a number that they give to the schools that is used to determine how much need-based aid somebody might be eligible for. And it's going to vary from school to school. But what is financial aid? Financial aid consists of a bunch of different types of aid, starting with the free money. How many people want free money? There were a couple hands that didn't go up. All right, now we got double hands going up. All right, awesome.
scholarships and grants. Scholarships are awarded based on merit. You don't have to be a scholar to get a scholarship. Its name originated in that area. But scholarships are given out for every reason under the sun. But scholarships don't come finding your student. Your student has to go find the scholarships. All right, some are a little easier to apply for than others, and I'll talk about that as I go through this. But scholarships are free. They don't have to be paid back. Grants are also free, but grants are awarded based on financial need. To qualify for a grant from the federal government, from the schools themselves, from the state of Florida, if your student is looking to attend a school in the state of Florida, my daughter didn't. She took off to California as quickly as she could get away from South Florida. After growing up here, she wanted to try something new. But everybody's different. You know, we'll talk about that as well. But scholarships and grants, these are the free monies. You have to have a certain level of need for grants. Then there's something called self-help aid, which can include student loans, federal student loans, and I'm going to show you the amounts that are awarded by the federal government. It's not a lot of money. People think, oh my God, the government's giving tons of aid, loans to students. No, they don't. You'll see the numbers in just a little bit. But loans are just that. They could be part of a financial aid award package, but they don't have to be accepted by the student. You can accept all your free money, you can accept the work study award, and you might not know what a work study award is, but loans, again, they have to be paid back by the student. It could be in their name, but they don't have to take them if they don't want them. And then a financial aid award package can also include work study. Work study is a federally funded part-time job on campus. Okay, funded by the federal government. You have to do a FAFSA form to see if you're eligible for loans, work study, and grants. You have to do a CSS profile application to see if you're eligible for grants from the school. And now, because of the delayed FAFSA form, many schools who are CSS profile schools, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit, are using the CSS profile to determine grants from the federal government, grants from the state of Florida, and grants from the institution initially. And I'll explain more about that in just a little bit. But, like I said, the package that you get when you get accepted, and you get your financial aid awards, could include grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. Merit scholarships, let's start talking about them. These are usually offered by the office, well, at UM, it's offered by the Office of Undergraduate Admission. Okay, it could be offered by the financial aid office at your school of choice or at the student school of choice. At the U, and you can learn more about this at miami.edu/scholarships, all applicants via the common application are being considered for acceptance and a merit award just based on their common application. There isn't a separate application at UM to complete for scholarships. But this varies from school to school. This is where your student, or you if you wanted to, should start creating a little Excel worksheet. These are the 27 different schools I'm interested in going to. Maybe they have that big of a list, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 15, but you have to have backup schools. Okay? You got to make sure that the school's the right fit for you and your family. But I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But other schools have varied processes. You know, some schools may have a supplemental application that your student has to complete for different types of scholarships within the school itself. We're going to talk about state aid and how to qualify and apply for it, learn about state aid programs as well. But when I say the Excel worksheet, you got to have all the schools listed. You got to have their deadlines for applying for admission, their deadlines for applying for scholarships and financial aid, and how you apply for scholarships and financial aid at that school, because it does vary from school to school. We, in the state of Florida, are only one of 2 schools that require a CSS profile application. A lot of schools, about 17% of the schools in the U.S. require it, and I'll talk more about what that form is all about and what it's used for in just a little bit. There we go. It caught up to me. All right. I'm going to point it towards that. That's what I got to do. I apologize for the delay here. Here we go. These are the most common types of grants that are offered by the federal government. The Pell Grant, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and Federal TEAS Grant. All right, Pell Grants, these are high need awards. If you have a high level of financial need as determined by the FAFSA form, you may be able, or the students may be able to qualify for these grants. Okay, you do have to complete the FAFSA form, and the school will let you know if the student is accepted to the school. The school will let you know if you're eligible for these types of awards. A couple of awards that are going to pop up during this presentation say apply early. The reason why is the federal government doesn't have unlimited funding for these awards. Or the state doesn't have unlimited funding for these awards. Like if you qualify for a Pell Grant, you get a Pell Grant. There's no limit to the funding for Pell Grants. But supplemental educational opportunity grants, work study, and a bunch of other things I'm going to show you in a little bit. A certain amount of money is given to the school. Once that money is given out on a first come, first served basis, there's no more of that money. So this is why deadlines are critically important. I'm going to talk about deadlines repeatedly throughout this presentation and how some deadlines need to be met and some deadlines need to be beaten, which means you do not want to just meet the deadline, especially with outside scholarships, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But these are different grant programs that are available based on high levels of financial need from the federal government. And then there's Bright Futures. How many of you hope your kids get a Bright Future scholarship? What is a Bright Future scholarship meant to do? Pay for at Florida schools and UM. What? Everybody, I saw a lot of those German Shepherd head tips. Wait, what? Yes, you can use it in the private sector too, as long as the school's in the state of Florida. You can use your Bright Future scholarship at UM, but it doesn't pay as much as it would have paid at Eagle with. Sorry, it pays exactly what they would have paid had you gone to a state school, and I'm going to show you the amounts in just a little bit. So you can start wrapping your mind around the fact that you can actually use your Bright Future scholarship outside of the state school system. But Bright Futures, you have to do your FFAA. Iris, when are we going to be doing the FFAA form?
December for
In
seniors.
December, the FFAA form takes about 5 minutes. It's a Florida financial aid application. This is not for need-based aid. This is not the FAFSA. I'll talk about the FAFSA in a little bit. But it is a form. Some people call it the Bright Future Scholarship application. It's not. It's for all Florida financial aid programs, okay? It's a form that has nothing to do with financial need, but it does have to do with whether or not your student is considering schools in the state of Florida and potentially could qualify for some type of state aid programs. All right, you don't have to do a FAFSA, you don't have to do a CSS profile application. It is not based on financial need in any way. The Bright Future Scholarship is based on merit. The students earned it based on their SAT scores, their new test called the CLT, their ACT scores, their weighted GPA, and community service hours. Okay, there's a lot of things that can make them eligible, and there are other things that can make them eligible for Bright Futures, like if they get the Cambridge diploma as part of the ACE. I don't know if you guys have an ACE curriculum here or anything. No, that's not the CSI, I'm going back, but I'm going to give you the website in a little bit, in a couple of slides, that is the site to go to for all types of state aid programs, to learn about eligibility criteria for each one. What does my student need to do to qualify for Bright Futures, for Jose Marti, for Benequisto, all of these types of things. These are awarded, this is the only award that your student will get that will vary every semester because they pay on a per credit basis, all right? How much they're gonna end up receiving, this may not even be up to date with the SAT and ACT scores, especially because I don't have CLT on here. That's the new test that is being looked at, in addition to SAT and ACT scores for Bright Future Scholarship eligibility. But I am going to give you the site that has the most current information on eligibility criteria for the different types of Bright Future Scholarship awards. But how much are they worth? Orange. Aren't you glad you're here? But the $6,330 is based on this year's per credit rate for Bright Futures, the top one. Florida Academic Scholar Scholarships. Those are otherwise affectionately known as the 100% award. This is the scholarship that pays for 100% of a state school's tuition. This is also the amount, whether they're going to state school or they're going to UM, that they would get if they're a Bright Future Scholarship recipient and they're accepted to UM. Okay? Or they go to a state school. Or they go to another school outside of the state school system that participates in the Bright Future Scholarship program like we do. So the Medallion Award is sometimes affectionately nicknamed the 75% award. This is how much they'll get per year. Per academic year for 4 years. And their dual enrollment, AP, whatever credits they're earning in high school that they could transfer with themselves to college, do not count. There we go. They do not, thank you. She's right there with the computer now. She's like, this is not me starting tonight. But, you know how, if you don't know, students can get 120 credits of Bright Future Scholarship money, and they do pay on a per credit basis in college. You know, but if they transfer 20 credits from dual enrollment from whatever they did in high school into college, those credits that they transferred into college don't count against the 120 they can use in college. So they could add a minor, and Bright Futures could help pay for that. You know, so just keep that in mind. And if they're going into a program like at UM, we have engineering and architecture that are longer than 120 credits, they can actually have their Bright Future Scholarship program revised to be extended to match what their degree program undergraduate credit requirements are. Like, we have programs that are 135, 138 credits for undergrads, and their Bright Future Scholarship program will end up paying for the whole thing. All right, but most programs are about 120 credits long, and these, like all awards, have renewal criteria. No matter what financial aid the student gets, they have to understand there's an academic component that goes along with their financial aid. Some are more strict, you know, like with the Florida Academic Scholarship, they have to have a 3.0 at the end of their first year to renew it to their second year. Medallion is 2.75. Vocational Gold Seal, I don't really know. That we can't use that one at UM, so I'm not that familiar with it. But all of this is going to be on the website that I'm going to show you in just a minute. That way. First off, this is something you may never have heard of. Has anybody heard of EASE? The Effective Access to Student Education Award? If your student is going to a Florida-based private institution like the University of Miami, and they're a Florida resident, if you get accepted to UM, every year you get $3,500 from the state without qualifying for anything else. You don't have to apply for financial aid, it's not need-based, it's not merit-based. This is free money. It's the only type of free money that is called an entitlement award. The students are entitled to it if you, as parents, are Florida residents. Not them. You have to prove that you've been a permanent Florida resident for at least 12 months prior to them starting at the school of choice. But this is only used and available in the private school system. All right? So if your student gets accepted to UM and you're a Florida resident and you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident as defined by Homeland Security, I'm talking about the student, they will get $3,500 off their cost of UM every single academic year, funded by the state of Florida. We like that, don't we? There's money. This is above and beyond Bright Futures, stacked on top of it if they qualify for Bright Futures, or above and beyond their merit award they may get from UM or at their school of choice. And I'm going to talk about proving Florida residency in just a little bit. And then the Benequisto Award. Has anybody heard that? No, this is the top award that is awarded by the state of Florida. This website is not the Benequisto Scholarship website. This is the website for all Florida student financial aid scholarships and grants. If you want to learn more about eligibility criteria for Bright Futures, Jose Marti, Benequisto, any EASE award, any of these things, this is where it is housed. So I encourage you, if you're going to take a picture of anything, or take a picture of that so that you know what your student needs to do to qualify for whatever state aid money that they can qualify for. It's Florida Student Financial Aid SG, which stands for scholarships and grants.org. All right, this is not the Benequisto Scholarship website. The Benequisto Scholarship is the biggest scholarship that the state of Florida awards, though. This is given to the best of the best of the best. Those are in the 99th percentile and the PSAT scores and the national merit scholars and that kind of thing are the majority of the students that receive a Benequisto Scholarship. The overall eligibility criteria, how students possibly can qualify for this, is on this website as well. How much is a Benequisto Scholarship? It is up to about the cost of education at the state school, and yes, if they qualify for this, they can use it at UM again as well. This is not in addition, as you can see, to a Bright Future Scholarship Award. This is how it's calculated. If a student qualifies for Benequisto, their cost of education at a state school is completely paid. They have no expense, pays for room, board, meals, books, everything, tuition and fees. This amount that you see here, the estimation based on this past academic year stuff, cost of attendance with the Department of Ed, this cost of attendance is fixed by the Department of Education, not our cost of attendance. UM's cost of attendance is about what? 90. Sorry. But our tuition is in the 50s. Yeah, the tuition and fees are about $60,000, room, board, meals, personal expenses, transportation expenses, books and supplies, all get thrown into this cost of attendance, and I'm going to talk more about cost of attendance in just a minute. But they can't use our cost of attendance. We wish the state is very generous, but they will not cover the UM's cost of attendance. But this is how much somebody would get. For example, that's if they got a $2,500 National Merit Award. Say they get a $500 National Merit Award, $1,000. This bottom line number would be larger. So the Benequisto Scholarship would be larger. But it's all combined between the Bright Future Scholarship, National Merit Award, and Benequisto can't exceed whatever the cost of attendance is as determined by the state of Florida. Good catch there, over. This is tripod out there. But this cost of attendance will vary and is determined every August. Keep that in mind, so it could go up. And if your student qualifies for this, it's for 4 years.
How do we fix it?
You know, 4 years of an undergraduate education, whether you're in the state school system or you're in a participating private school outside of the state school system, but in the state of Florida. Right, futures can't be carried outside of the state of Florida. No Florida state aid programs can't be used outside of the state of Florida, but Florida prepaid money can. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the state of Florida just keeps on giving. If students qualify for grants from the federal government, like the Pell Grants and things like that, those high need grants I put up a few slides ago, they may qualify also for a Florida Student Assistance Grant. This is another one of those not funded forever and ever and ever. A certain amount is given out to the school, it's given out on a first come, first served basis, and it's up to $3,200 a year. It varies. Some schools give out $1,000 a year, some 2, some 3, we give out $3,200 a year to those who have the need for it. Okay, and this is need-based, it's based on the FAFSA form. So if you do the FAFSA form and you have a high level of financial need, this could be part of a financial aid award package. How many of your students have already started researching outside scholarships? What? How many of you don't know if your students have been researching outside scholarships? All right, I got a couple of hands. All right, very good. Well, we are at the beginning of the scholarship season. The handout that you were given earlier, or that you might get before you leave, that Iris was mentioning earlier, has information on FastWeb, on a bunch of places where you can go to get scholarships. But even if you go to look on those sites right now, you're going to find out that a lot of application deadlines have already started expiring. We're at the beginning of the scholarship season. It started in September. And it ends in like March or April, maybe some like trickle up down to the end of April. But most scholarship application deadlines for private scholarships are in December, January, and February. All right? So when it comes to outside scholarships, this is that thing, you know, I said, how many of you want to pay full tuition? No. Many of your students right now, and I've talked to many of, not your students, but many students over my years at UM and in my career that say, you know, my parents are rich. I don't have to go through all of this. My parents have money. Why should I put in effort to this? They already have a 529 plan for me. They got Florida prepaid. Again, do you want to pay more for college than you need to pay? No. This is the homework that is going to get you to get them started on a part-time job. Not working at an hourly rate, but in researching scholarships. Scholarships can be found in many, many different places. All right? It can be the admissions office, the financial aid office, different academic departments within the school or college itself. The students have to do the research, that Excel worksheet. You know, how do I apply for scholarships? How do I apply for admission? How do I apply for financial aid at each of the schools? What are the deadlines? What are the links? Where do I need to go? They got to get that stuff figured out now. If they're seniors. If you're juniors, you got a lot more time on your hands. That's awesome. But being here gives you a distinct advantage towards what they need to do to be prepared for not missing deadlines that have already expired in September of their senior year. Okay? But academic departments, like for example, at the University of Miami, we have the Frost School of Music. Have you ever heard of it? If you're in South Florida, you must have heard of it. But the Frost School of Music, that's the only other department outside of our Office of Admission, undergraduate admission, that offers merit awards. We call them talent-based awards. They are offered by, you know, those students who are going into the Frost School of Music who prove that they are talented, musically, vocally, whatever it is that they're going into within the Frost School. You know, they audition for scholarships at UM. Why I say that is because of the fact that this can be the same as other schools. Other schools and colleges within the university may offer scholarships, but you gotta do your research to find out about that. And then online scholarships, FastWeb, FastWeb.com, scholarships.com, there's other sites like GoBerry.com and things like that, that students can utilize to find scholarships. But you have to start now, because the scholarship season started when? Last month. So as you start looking on these websites, if you want to peruse them, you're going to see some application deadlines have already expired. Most are in, as I said, December, January, February. This is where deadlines are critically important from my own standpoint. I toured Harvard with my daughter when she was in 8th grade. She was an Ivy League kid. That's when we learned not only do you have to have a holistic, you know, high school experience to get into Ivy League schools, But, in addition to the academics, but also that you have to apply for as many scholarships as physically possible. If you're going to send out, or if the student's going to send out 1, 2, 3, and keep their fingers crossed, they're not going to get one.
Tell him that me,
And you're like, something rude. No, it's a numbers game.
Nick,
My own financial advisor for my investment and things like that, he also gives advice for college planning, and I've been in financial aid for decades, and he's like, your daughter's got to be doing 200 outside scholarship applications. I'm like, what? 200? Are you crazy? I've never heard of that in my entire life. But I was never a parent. You know, I was always like the administrator, educating people on things. My daughter did 43 different applications and got 11. She was third in her class, involved in everything under the sun. And that is a good conversion rate for outside scholarships to actual awards. Like a quarter of them. And most people don't even get a quarter of them. Some of them are lucky and they get more. But you gotta saturate the market. Students gotta look at scholarship research as a part-time job that can be very lucrative. And get past the idea that my mom and dad have some money. And that they don't have to worry about that. I'm just gonna concentrate on my academics. It's not an all-encompassing process. And for example, if your student takes 10 hours of their time researching scholarships online, and they find information on 15 different scholarship applications that are perfect for them, they're me. If I apply for these, I'm gonna get it. They're thinking in their mind. Or I might get it, so I should apply for it. So they find 15 different scholarship applications after spending 10 hours worth of time researching. Yes, and I know they do not want to spend 10 straight hours researching scholarships on a Saturday when they want to hang out with their friends. I'm not saying that. You know, a couple hours here, a couple hours here over the next week or two, because we're already in the scholarship season. Of course, if you're a junior, keep in mind, or your children are juniors, the scholarships that are offered for this upcoming fall are the same scholarships that are offered the following fall. So they can research scholarships in the beginning of their sophomore year, junior years, needless to say, now senior year, and just hold on to that information. They can't apply for most of these scholarships until they're seniors. But they can get a jump start on things. And if they did find 10, 15 different scholarships after spending 10 hours worth of time researching scholarships, and then they spend 10 more hours filling out applications and sending them out to the scholarship organizations. Now they've devoted 20 hours worth of their time, they sent out 15 different applications.
these are fine.
What if they only got
These are
one
fine, and yeah,
for
it's
$1,000? Was it worth it? You as parents say yes. Students usually say, no, I should have got 5 or 10, I'm me. Right? Would your child possibly say something like that? Yes. The only thing is, the reality of the conversion rate of applications to actual awards isn't that good. But if they did get one for $1,000, they just devoted 20 hours worth of time. They got paid $1,000. If you look at that as a part-time job, how much is that hourly? $50 an hour. What if they got $4,000 out of those 15 different applications? How much are they getting paid hourly? $200 an hour to research scholarships. If they're working part-time right now and, you know, wherever, are they getting paid $200 an hour? No, they're not. And they could be saving you thousands and thousands of dollars. On those 11 applications for my daughter, it was $14,000. I was like, praise you, praise you, praise you. She put in a lot of time and effort to find those 40 some odd applications. And she's my daughter. So I kept pushing her throughout her junior year and into her senior year. And then she was motivated. Because she knows, I work in education, you know, we're not getting rich working in higher ed most of the time. And she was determined. She ended up winning a full tuition scholarship for 4 years at Pomona College out in California. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pomona College, Harvey Mudd, Claremont Consortium and that kind of thing, great little school. And she just started her career in Manhattan in her a month into her career, she's already making more than me. I was like, she is a rock star. And I'm very, very proud of my daughter, and I'd like to brag about her, and I apologize if I'm going off on a tangent there. But it is something that can pay off. It can be a lucrative part-time job for students, but this is the point. You've got to get your students to be motivated enough to put that time and effort into it. They put in 40 hours, and they got, you know, $10,000 worth of scholarships. Wow, that can pay off big time. That would be amazing for themselves if they're having to contribute a portion to their educational expenses and to you to save you that money. But outside scholarships, again, it's a part-time job. This is what you should be pushing them towards right now when you go home, not making, that's not, you can ease into it, you know? This is when you start sharing about, like, especially if you're applying for a need-based aid, they might think you make $1 billion a year. Because you've never had a conversation with them about what you actually make. Well, if you go into the need-based aid application process, they're going to know what you make. And it might be more or less than what they think. And whoop, all right, rock and roll, it's on it. This one hand totally doesn't, something happened behind me. All right, good. Well, this is huge. You know, applying for outside scholarships is a huge thing. Like I said, it's a very lucrative thing that they can get involved in, and it can pay off tremendously. All right, tips for scholarship research and searches. I tell students, don't rule yourself out. Some people think, oh, I'm not in the top 10% of my class. That doesn't mean anything. You don't have to be in the top 10% of your class. My son was just over the middle, and he got 6 outside scholarships. He went crazy, didn't apply for quite as many as his sister, but he got some. You know, don't rule yourself out. Start as early as possible. Apply for as many as possible. Pay close attention to deadlines. With outside scholarships, and this happened with both of my children, they said, oh my God, this is the perfect scholarship. I am going to get this one. They got all the stuff ready. They went to submit it like a week before the deadline. They were like, I'm ahead of the deadline. They went to log in, and they said, sorry, we're not accepting any more applications. We met our quota. What? Yes, the scholarship organization, even if the deadline's November 1st, December 1st, can shut it off 2, 3, 4, or 5 weeks at a time. Because they have a certain bandwidth within their organization to not take in more applications than they can actually read. And now with the internet, they get a ton of applications. So I tell students all the time, if the deadline is December 1st, your deadline is November 1st. If the deadline is January 1st, your deadline is December 1st. You should be trying to beat, especially with outside scholarships, beat the deadlines by at least a month. Don't dilly-dally, or you're going to be so depressed like my kids were. Like, now you hear it's like, oh, I just remember with both of my kids. They're like, oh no! Oh, Dad, no! You know? And it's like, there's nothing you can do. If they cut them off, they're done. They're not going to accept any more applications. All right, pay close to deadlines. Go to a lot of different sources. Tell friends and family you're searching for scholarships. Use social media. You know, use your TikTok pages. No, that's the wrong thing. Snapchat, right? You guys know Snapchat? No, maybe not that. Facebook! You say, all right, yes, that's the thing I knew I was getting there. I forgot my audience. But no, Facebook. You know, use social media. If you're on Instagram, you know, tell everybody, hey, is anybody on about engineering scholarships, or my kid's looking to go into business, trying to finance major, or whatever it is. Utilize the resources that you have. You know, you never know what's going to pop up. Somebody, a friend of a friend, hey, my kid went to so-and-so college, and, you know, they applied for this scholarship, either at the college or from a private organization. You know, it's great, word of mouth. But utilize the resources that you have. Make use of the scholarship search directories, watch for scholarship scams. What that means is if somebody's asking you for money, walk away. Scholarship organizations should be charitable organizations and not be asking for any application fees whatsoever. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of applications that students can complete, and nobody should be asking for any application fee on any of them. Write a thank you note to the organization themselves. That worked really well with my daughter. You know, she had a couple of local organizations out of those, the number she had received, and they were small. They weren't big scholarships or anything like that, but it all adds up. And if you stick in their mind, you know, like, maybe we don't have enough funding to renew all of them for the second year in college, you know. But, wait a minute, wasn't that the student who wrote that really nice thank you note and then called us to thank you personally afterwards? They put little notes in her file. My daughter graduated in one of those organizations, gave her a $2,000 graduation present. I was like, what is this check? That just came in, because she lives with me. Not anymore, but, you know, I was like, you just got a check for $2,000. She's like, what? And it says, congratulations on your graduation, that kind of thing. And they helped her even after college. I was like, wow. Pretty cool, but it was one of those organizations that she developed a relationship with. You know? It was a local Hollywood, Florida organization. You had to be a Hollywood resident. I can tell you that. But, scholarship searches. You know, warning signs, again, this all comes down to The student is being solicited by some random organization, walk away. If they're asking you for money, walk away. If they're asking you over the phone for any identifiable information like social security number and birth date and all these types of things, if you solicit them and you find them online, they're a legitimate company, if you work with the company, great. But you're gonna get a lot of scams. You know, mailings about this scholarship organization. Oh, just fill out this form and send it in and ask for name, rank, serial number, that kind of stuff. I teach about identity theft at the University of Miami, and I've seen scholarship scams turn into identity theft issues. So you want to avoid that stuff. You know, if the student doesn't approach or find the organization and they come randomly finding themselves, usually means walk away. If they're asking for money, usually means walk away. And then beyond, and I'm going to talk about a lot of other state aid, things like that in just a second, but financial aid award packages could include a student loan from the federal government. If you want to learn more about what the government offers for student loans and more details about the student loans that are offered by the government other than what you can see here, does anybody know the difference between a subsidized or unsubsidized student loan? Subsidized loans, so you get a hand now? Subsidized loans could be part of a financial aid award package, and they're only up to $3,500 for a first-year student. That's the most that the government will allow a student to get. And I'll show you that on the next slide in a minute. Unsubsidized loans are loans that, a subsidized loan does not earn interest while the student is enrolled in school. It is awarded based on financial need from the completion of the FAFSA award, as determined by the FAFSA form. Unsubsidized student loans can be no more than about $2,000. They do earn interest while the student is enrolled in school, but you don't have to accept any loans whatsoever. As part of the financial aid award package, if the student is offered student loans, you can decline. School's totally good. And that speaks to the different types of loans we're going to talk about in a little bit. You've got to find a school that's the right social fit, the right academic fit, the right resources fit, the right spirit fit. There's a lot of spirit at UM, you think?
Yeah.
Why? Because we have a lot of really cool sporting teams. And we have a lot of things happening. We had a preview of you this weekend. It was the first time ever. I just had a little epiphany doing the financial aid portion of the presentation. I got 1,000 people to do the wave to go Canes. I literally had to, you guys want to do the wave? No. But there's a lot of spirit there, you know, and that might be important. But you also got to find a school that's the right financial fit for the student and you all as a family. I don't, and I tell students in every presentation we do at the U, I don't want students to take on a lot of unnecessary debt or overborrow to become a Cane. Yes, it'd be great if you're a Cane, if you get accepted to the school, and for you to be a Cane, but just because you dreamed about being a Cane doesn't mean you're going to be accepted, you know, two, that your family can afford it. You know, we are very generous. I'm going to talk about how we award need-based aid and how generous we are with need-based aid and merit awards and things like that, but you do have to find a school that's the right financial fit. And I don't encourage students, this type of loan that they can get from the government, they're not large amounts. Like I said, the most for a first-year student in the subsidized loan is $3,500, $2,000 in the unsubsidized loan. This is the limit set by the government. This isn't where overborrowing takes place. It's with private educational loans, which I'll talk about in a minute. I don't know why I left all the sophomore, junior, and seniors. You can say, see, for the second year, they can get a little bit more as a sophomore, a little bit more. These are offered from the government. StudentAid.gov is a site where you go to learn more about these. This bar green column here isn't given to students straight out of high school. All right, kids who just graduated, they're starting, unless they're independent. Independent as defined by the FAFSA, not by themselves. All right, I'm 19, I'm doing my own thing, I got my own apartment, I got a job, I'm independent. No, not for financial aid purposes, you're not. You gotta be 24 years old, veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, have your own children, be married, things along those lines to be considered independent. And only independent students can get this bar column of unsubsidized student loan money from the federal government. The only exception to that is if a parent loan for undergraduate students, which is the most common loan taken out by parents in the United States, which I'll talk more about that in the next slide, is denied due to credit reasons. A student straight out of high school could potentially qualify for a little bit more, $4,000 more in federal student loans, if a parent is denied for credit reasons for a PLUS loan. And what is a PLUS loan? It's basically the federal William D. Ford Direct Plus Parent Loan for undergraduate students, is what PLUS stands for. Right? This is a loan that's in the parent's name. It's the most common loan, again, that is taken out by parents. You have to do a FAFSA form because parents have to be confirmed as U.S. citizens or permanent residents, as defined by Homeland Security. The FAFSA does that for us. It's got like an 8% interest rate. It is a credit-based loan. You have good credit, you get it. If you don't, you don't. I don't know what the credit score cutoff is or anything like that, but you can learn more about it at studentaid.gov. This is something you don't apply for as a parent until the end of their senior year. When you figured out all the financial aid they're getting from all the different resources, and now I know exactly what my balance is, and now, do I have enough money in the bank to pay it on a payment plan, something like that? Or if I don't, and my kid, this is their dream school, and I'm gonna make it happen for them, this may be a loan option to cover part or all of whatever is owed after their financial aid awards. But it's not decided upon until the summer, after their senior year. Studentaid.gov is where you end up going. And then there are private educational loans. These are the loans where I discourage students from, we call them loans of last resort. Because if maybe a parent, you don't have credit enough to get a plus loan, or you don't want to take on more debt, because the student has made the choice of school that you may not agree with. I can't afford that school. You know, we're not ready to pay for that. But the student's like, I'm going. They get their aunt, uncle, grandmother, or somebody to co-sign with them on the loan. And this is where over-borrowing takes place. This is a loan that can be taken out in a student's name with a cosigner. The cosigner does not need to be you, it can be anyone who is creditworthy, not living paycheck to paycheck, having not a crazy debt to income ratio and that kind of thing. This is not a bank's website. ELMS stands for Electronic Loan Management Systems election page. That's what this website is. This is a database of lenders, like all the major banks you've ever heard of, plus some you haven't heard of. And all you do is you log in there and you end up, and this is something you do only in the summer. You can do it for part or all of the balance that's owed, same with the plus loan. It would be in the student's name, but they have to have a cosigner because they're too high risk right now because they're so young to be able to get a loan on their own. They don't have a long enough job history, they don't have a long enough credit history, and things along those lines. So they can't get this type of loan in their own name. But if they do get one, it is up to the cost of attendance. Again, don't borrow up to the cost of attendance just because you can. Borrow only what you truly need to afford that school. So keep that in mind. This is an option for them, but it is something that you only decide upon during the summer. And then work study. That's federally funded part-time job on campus. Comes as part of the FAFSA form. And the money they make, if they get a work study award as part of their financial aid, it might say $4,000 worth of a work study award. That's not a grant, it's not a scholarship, it's not a loan. It is the funding that's been given from the Department of Education to the school to fund their paycheck if they work in a work study position. If they don't work, that money goes back to the government at the end of the year. Or end of the semester. All right? It is a job opportunity on campus. These jobs are great. All schools are the same. These schools are mandated to work their schedule around, their work schedule around their class schedule. And most people who are working in work study jobs are working like 9 or 10 hours a week and on campus. There are some opportunities for off-campus things, but most are on campus. We have work studies at the University of Miami. We have about 9,000 to 10,000 undergraduate students, and about 3,500 of them are working on campus. A third of our undergraduate population works at the U. On campus, not just works while they're going to school. There are other students who work off campus, but just in our on-campus employment opportunities. And about 55% of them work in work study positions. And this is where most work opportunities in college are, where the funding comes from. But schools like UM, we have about 45% of our students who work in non-need-based work opportunities. We call them student-assisted positions. You don't have to apply for financial aid if you're interested in doing research or working at the university. We have a lot of work opportunities at the school for people who are not applying for financial aid at all. But most schools don't do that, especially in the state school system. State school, you either qualify for work study or you don't get a job on campus. There are some exceptions, like resident assistants. Anybody know what a resident assistant is in the residence hall? If you lived on campus, probably that was the person who was watching out for you, or being your resource for you in case you needed any help on the off hours, after in the evenings and things like that. There are other work opportunities that most schools, especially those that have residence halls, may have for students, but they're very limited. So if students want to work on campus from a parent standpoint, the Department of Education has been reporting for the last several years that students who work on campus and student employment opportunities on campus have higher graduation rates. They develop a better connection to the university. They build their resume. They get money that goes in their pocket. It does not go towards their tuition. It goes in their pocket. When they earn that money, it goes in their pocket. They use it for spending on whatever they want to spend it on. Keeps you from having to send them as big of an allowance every single month. You know, putting money in their bank account and that kind of thing. You jump in. Florida prepaid tuition plans. This is not financial aid, but why am I talking about it? Because it's part of financing and education. Those of you who have a Florida prepaid plan, or you may have a 529 plan, but I'm going to talk more about Florida prepaid right now. This is meant to pay for a state school's tuition, especially if you have the four-year university plan, which is the most common one. Okay? It can be used outside of the state school system as well. You can use it at the University of Miami, you can use it at any school in the United States that is willing to build the Florida prepaid program. But, again, this isn't financial aid. This is an investment that you put money into. Maybe when your kids were 2 years old. Long time ago. And the idea was I was prepaying the tuition at a state school at a much lower rate when they're a baby. Or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. With the expectation that this plan, this investment, is going to pay for a state school's tuition. Depending on which plan you got into. There's 2-year plans, 2+2 plans, 4-year university plans. I had a 4-year university plan for both of my children. And I did not use them in the state school system. I used one out in California at Pomona College, and I used one with my son now in his first year of college. But the Florida prepaid program, again, it can be used outside of the state school system, but you get the most bang for the buck when you use it within the state schools. Okay? And how Florida prepaid works, as an example, I had the 4-year university plan, so this is the only thing I have the most experience with. And the 4-year university plan is meant to pay tuition for 4 years at, Florida State School, University of Florida, Florida FSU, that type of thing. And it does. What happens with Florida prepaid, though, does anybody know what the per credit rate for tuition is at a state university? It's about $212 a credit, approximately. Okay? Which is what Bright Futures pays. If you remember what that was, the top Bright Futures award is around $212 a credit. Florida prepaid does not pay $212 a credit. If you have that 4-year university plan, it pays about $162 a credit to the state schools, and the state schools have an agreement with Florida prepaid that if somebody has a 4-year university plan, they wipe out the other $50 a credit for you. So, even though Florida prepaid is only paying $162 a credit to the state school, you're getting the full benefit of the $200 and something a credit for your kid to go to a state school. Unless they have the top Bright Future Scholarship. Then you only get the $162 a credit. They don't wipe out the other $52 or $50. I found that out visiting Florida State. That's why I chose for my daughter not to go to Florida State. And she wanted full tuition, so I wanted to go to school. But, did anybody know that already? Yeah, I'm going to repeat it. Most people think you've got the Bright Future Scholarship, paying for 100% of tuition. That's $6,300. And now I've got Florida prepaid 4-year university plan. That should be paying $6,300 a year too, right? It doesn't. If they have the top Bright Futures award, you get about $4,700 a year from Florida prepaid. They get paid $162 to a state school, and the state school is not going to give you the benefit of that wiping out of the $50 of credit. You're going to get Bright Futures paying for the per credit rate, and then that extra money you get from Florida prepaid can be used to room, board, plans, and other expenses that the student has. Sadly, that's the reality of Florida prepaid if your student gets 100% Bright Futures scholarship. You won't get $6,300 plus $6,300, you're going to get $6,300 plus from Florida prepaid about $4,700. If they don't have the 100% award, you can get that full $6,300 from the Florida prepaid program every single year for the 4 years. Yeah, that's a downer, but that's how I found out about it, visiting Florida State and talking to their financial aid office. And I was like, wait, what? How? What? No. Yes, that is reality. But if you do decide on a school, and they're in the state of Florida or not in the state of Florida, you have to notify Florida prepaid. You all, as the payer or the student, can notify the Florida prepaid program where they're going. Like in June. After the May 1st deadline for deposits, that kind of thing. They let them know, and then you're going to end up having to set up billing with the school of choice. All right, and at some schools like UM, at some schools like UM, once you set up the billing, it's on autopilot.
We bill every single month until the Florida prepaid money has been depleted. I mean, not month, sorry, every semester until the Florida prepaid money has been depleted. All right, but you are gonna have to set up billing, you're gonna have to notify Florida prepaid what the school of choice is. They'll notify you if it's a state school. It's simple, there isn't any extra form you need to do, you just gotta notify them. If it's out of the state school system, you're gonna end up needing to do a transfer form. It's an online form, it takes like 2 minutes for you to do, super simple. And it transfers it out of the state school system into your school of choice. Okay? And then you gotta contact the billing office at the school of choice. And the Florida prepaid office usually has all the contact numbers for all the schools that participate in billing with Florida prepaid. Even my schools out in California, all around the country. As long as the school's willing to bill Florida prepaid, they will do so. If they're not willing to bill Florida prepaid, there is still a way for you to get access to the money. If the school says, no, I don't know what this Florida prepaid plan is, and we don't bill those, this is Ohio, you know, whatever. No offense to Ohio State fans or anything like that. But, no, I use that as a random example. You can still get access to your money, all right? It would end up being issued to the student. Like you would end up having to give their schedule, their bill each semester, you know, proving that they're enrolled in school, and they will end up releasing the funds on a semesterly basis to you all. So just keep that in mind. 1-800-552-GRAD is the Florida prepaid number. If you want to call them and say, hey, I have the university plan, I've got fees plan, I got a board plan, what's it worth? I don't know. They will, but you got to say, hey, if you have to tell them, you know, I don't know, I'm not going to ask you what it's going to be 2 years from now when my kid goes to college, or next year when my kid goes to college, because they can't tell you that. Because if my kid was in college, my student was in college right now, what would it be worth? And they'll tell you, yes.
So I'm just trying to do the math on this because I've got 3 of them. And my understanding was you're buying today's tuition rate. And if you just go on the website now and do it for a new year, a 1-year-old, it's higher than what you're telling me that the average cost is. And my understanding was 18 years from now when they're going to college, if they go out of state like your daughter did, they'll transfer whatever the Florida equivalent, that's where you gain, right? Where you don't
Could be,
lose.
I don't know how it works for young people right now, because I put in money into it 22 years ago. And so I'm not sure if you're signing up for a Florida prepaid program now, you did in the last few years. I don't know what you're paying and how it would work. But when I signed up, the idea was, and with many of us, that you paid at a state rate of tuition that was in existence when you signed up for the plan.
Right.
And that it would pay for a 4-year university plan, it would pay for the tuition at a state school for 4 years.
So is your figure, you said your figure is now current at 216 or whatever it is?
211 a credit is what the state charges for on a per credit basis for the university, like University of Florida, FSU, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for 120 hours, they're charging 237. So I don't know why they would.
That's the fees, not tuition. That
Oh,
includes
that's
fees.
just tuition, is
Yes, the
216?
211 is just the tuition. The fees, they add in a little bit more for, what do you call it, a fees plan. Because you can do a tuition and a fees plan. You can do a board plan if you want to too, for a year or 2 years. And you choose that. You may have that for your children. That's why I say if you want to know what your plan would be worth in today's dollars right now at the school of choice, you have to tell them what school. You call them up and just ask. They'll let you know what it would end up being. And how do you get on the radar of schools when it comes to need-based aid? A lot of schools is just make sure you add the school to the FAFSA form. All right? Simple, right? Well, at the University of Miami, it starts with a yes, and other schools use the common application to determine whether or not somebody's interested in applying for need-based aid. This is not merit awards at the University of Miami. This is just need-based aid. Money from the federal government, the state, or the University of Miami that's based on financial need. There is a supplemental question on the common application, or a few questions on the common application that are UM specific. All right, you have to find out, do the other schools also have a supplemental question on the common application? This question, once the common application's been submitted, can't be edited. All right, so maybe your student is submitting the common application and they said, no, we're not interested in need-based aid. My parents are millionaires, which you may be. But maybe your business didn't do all that well this past year and you want to be considered for need-based aid. You can't correct that. All right? Or vice versa. You know, they say, yes, I definitely, my parents have been complaining about money for years.
and I think we need to be considered for need-based ed. And then you're like, now full disclosure time, we made $3 million last year. And it's like, what? And so now, if you say yes, if the student says yes, the school's gonna start asking for FAFSA forms. Like UM will start asking for the FAFSA form, tax return, CSS profile applications. I'll talk all about them in a second. But every school's different. You know, like I said, some schools it's as simple as just adding the school to the FAFSA form. That's what you gotta find out, that Excel worksheet. You know, what is every school's process for applying for financial aid? For us to import CSS profile applications or FAFSA forms or tax records from the College Board, which I'm gonna talk about in a minute, students have to say yes to this question about need-based aid. We are not looking at this question for merit awards. Again, to repeat that, at the University of Miami, but some schools, not most, but some schools do look at need for merit awards. All right, so you have to do your research. You gotta find out what is every school's process for all types of financial aid. For us, they have to do that on the College Board, on the common application. And then that thing called the CSS profile application. This is something that all Ivy League schools and high-end private schools require students to do in addition to the FAFSA form if you're applying for need-based aid. All of them. Harvard, Stanford, all of the Claremont Consortium schools did. I had to fill it out every year for 4 years. CSSprofile.collegeboard.org. Yes, it's the same College Board that does the SATs and ACTs, but they also process this form. Normally, this form, and traditionally this form, has been used to determine need-based aid from the school itself. And that is what's going to happen for those of you who are junior parents right now. All right, this form, if they go into a CSS profile school, will solely be used for determining need-based aid from the schools themselves, and the FAFSA form is used to determine need-based aid from the federal government and the state where they're going to school, the state of Florida. But this year is different. If your student is applying to a CSS profile school like the University of Miami, we're using the CSS profile application to determine need-based aid from the federal government, the state of Florida, and the university itself. Okay, so I'm going to show you some deadlines that we have. And most CSS profile schools are doing the same thing that we're doing. Even though the FAFSA is available when? Do we know? Somebody said it. In December up in the back. It's available in December. The CSS profile application is available right now. And we'll talk about deadlines for CSS profile application, but this form is completed by the student if the biological parent household, biological parents are not together. There are 2 CSS profile applications that have to be completed at CSS profile schools. One's called a custodial CSS profile application, and the other one is a non-custodial parent CSS profile application. And step parents have to be included in the process as well, not just your parents. It doesn't matter whether you have a prenuptial agreement saying my husband, wife has no financial obligation to this student's anything, and I'm solely responsible for it. The Department of Education doesn't care. Sorry, not that they truly don't care, but the law is that it has to include all spouses of the biological parent in the financial aid process at CSS profile schools. Keep in mind, on the FAFSA form, it's just the custodial parent and their spouse. All right, which I'm going to talk about the FAFSA form in just a minute. But what if your student has no contact with their non-custodial parent? They don't know how to contact their non-custodial parent. The non-custodial parent took off 15 years ago and they haven't seen them in whatever. There are waiver applications that every school has, every CSS profile school has, that with third-party documentation from counselors, therapists and things like that, on letterhead signed by them that can corroborate the fact that the student has no ability to contact that other person. You might be able to get approved for a non-custodial parent waiver, which means the non-custodial parent never is looked at again by that school. But in most cases, if you have any ability as a student to contact a non-custodial parent, that parent's information will be part of the financial aid process at a CSS profile school, which is all Ivy League schools and most high-end privates. This is available now. It actually came available before October 1st, and we'll talk about deadlines for this. This is a form that is completed by the student. If you know anything about the FAFSA form, and I'll talk about it, that's completed by both the student and parent. And this I already mentioned, with CSS profile schools, it's both biological parents and their spouses have to be part of the process.
When it comes to the FAFSA form, it's a little bit different. But to be prepared to do a CSS profile application and apply for a need-based aid at the schools of choice, for the fall of 2024, they're gonna need your 2022 tax information. All right, because they're the ones submitting the CSS profile application, especially the initial one, the custodial one. So tax records, K1s, 1120Ss, 1065s. If you're part of a partnership and you're not the managing partner, get the 1065 from the managing partner because the school's gonna need it. Okay? Any untaxed income, bank statements, business values, stocks, bonds, assets, whatever you have, all has to be disclosed in the CSS profile application. One thing that's different about the CSS profile application and the FAFSA is that you don't have to manually put anything in on the FAFSA with it in relation to income. They automatically pull it from the IRS on the FAFSA form. They're both part of the federal government. But there is something called IDOC. After the College Board has collected the CSS profile application, and many FAFSA-only schools that don't use a CSS profile application to determine need-based aid also use IDOC. IDOC is an encrypted software program through the College Board that is used to collect tax records. Every CSS profile school uses this. A lot of FAFSA-only schools use this as well. Some schools have their own system to encrypted software program that's used to collect tax records. They must be signed tax returns. If you do not sign on the signature line on page 2 of your 1040, it will show up as having been submitted. All right, so make sure, and if it's 120 pages long, the school needs all 120 pages, all schedules, worksheets, Schedule E, 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever it is, Schedule C, and so on and so on. So you got to make sure all of these are submitted to the school of choice at the schools of choice. And you have to submit it for each individual school, even if they all are using IDOC. You have to submit it separately for each individual school, and then the schools will have access to it, as long as you listed that I'm submitting this for University of Miami. We'll have access to it. But we do need the whole thing. It has to be signed. Make sure you include your W-2s, K1, 1120Ss, 1065s, everything. But the FAFSA form. A lot of things have changed with the FAFSA form. This is the pre-application for federal student aid. This is the form that is used to apply for need-based aid from the federal government and the state of Florida, as an example. And as I'll show you in a little bit, CSS profiles are the first thing that are going to end up for fall of 2024. If you're going to a CSS profile school, that's going to be completed well before the FAFSA even becomes available. Especially if you're applying like early action or early decision, that kind of thing, so that schools can use that to determine financial aid eligibility. Other schools that are FAFSA-only schools, or those who are CSS profile application schools, people have to do the FAFSA and the CSS profile application, but this is done after, right? Every school has a deadline for this form. You have to look at the school's website to find out what the deadline is for the FAFSA form. For you to be able to complete the FAFSA form as a student and parent, because there are two parts to this, you have to get something called an FSA ID. It's a login. If you have it from you being a student in college, you can use that same FSA ID for you. If you have it from another student of yours being in college and you applying for financial aid, it's the same FSA ID for you. All right, but what has changed for this upcoming academic year, for the fall of 2024, you're going to not be called a parent, you're going to be called a contributor. The student's called a contributor. Both parents are called contributors. It doesn't mean you're contributing financial money to the student, you're contributing records. Okay? And you have to give consent to the FAFSA to access your IRS records. If you don't give consent, that means your FAFSA will never be processed.
Minute.
All right. But parents who file separately, if you file joint tax returns, only one parent needs an FSA ID. If you file separate tax returns, then you each need an FSA ID. Both parents need one and the student needs one. Okay, this is obtained at studentaid.gov right here. This you have to obtain before going in to try to complete the FAFSA form. It takes 3 to 5 business days for you to get it. Just keep that in mind. So if your deadline for completing a FAFSA form is November 1st, November 15th, January 1st, whatever it is at the school of choice, it would be November, sorry for the FAFSA, it's not available until December. But say it's January 1st, You don't go and try to get your FSA ID on December 29th. You won't get it. It takes 3 to 5 days, and you'd end up having not met the school's deadline for financial aid. You don't want that to happen. Whoops, one more time. Yes! Like as I said, tax records are imported automatically for the fall of 2024. And again, as I mentioned, some schools use the CSS profile to estimate what you're going to get for financial aid from the FAFSA form based on traditional FAFSA calculations. They give the school 2 separate numbers. One, what they think will come from the FAFSA, and what they will be using for need-based aid from the school of choice. All right, but there's a lot to think about when it comes to this. This is not available yet. You do have to find out what the school's deadline is for this and make sure that you have your FSA IDs in place before that time comes. And, of course, if you're starting in the fall of 2024, you're using 2022's tax information, not 2023's, but maybe 2023 is worse. Your business didn't do as good, between jobs, went through a divorce, we filed together last year, we're not together anymore. You had a lot of medical bills, somebody passed in the family. Communicate this with the financial aid office. All right, let them know that if there's anything you need that might affect the financial need of the student and potentially help them get more financial aid. You have to do it with each individual school though. All right, if you experience something like this, you communicate this with the school itself. And this is how we determine financial need. Not an algebraic equation like I said before. Cost of attendance minus this number that comes from the FAFSA called the Student Aid Index. Used to be called the EFC, the Expected Family Contribution. Now the fall of 2024 and beyond is called the Student Aid Index. From the CSS profile application at CSS profile schools, it's still called an Expected Family Contribution. But it gets put into this spot in this calculation. Take the cost of attendance at your chosen school, minus the student aid index or expected family contribution from the CSS profile application, minus any other aid that you get. And as before, like I mentioned, cost of attendance can include a lot of different things, as can other aid, all right? Cost of attendance minus that number we get from the FAFSA and the CSS profile minus any other financial aid that the students are getting. State aid, Pell Grants, grants from the, scholarships from merit awards from the university, outside scholarships, athletic awards. Something that's kind of weird. Should I push a button? I don't know how I did. If I did, we'll push this away for a minute. Maybe that'll help. Fee waivers if your employer is helping pay for tuition at said chosen school, that kind of thing. But these are all subtracted because these are being applied towards the cost of attendance. They're meant to be applied to the cost of attendance. So this bottom line number is the financial need of the student. Not all schools award need-based aid. UM does. We actually, whatever that bottom line number is, say that number, I mean, we have students getting $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 a year in grants from us who are highly financially needy. Some students come to me, and I say it all the time, I'm like, you know, students who come to me during orientation, Mr. Mangan, you were right. UM was as inexpensive as UF because we have a lot of financial need. All right? But this bottom line number, UM is meeting 100% of everybody's financial need, no matter how you apply for admission into the University of Miami. All right? You can learn more at miami.edu/within reach. What should be happening? You know, financial aid timelines. Right now, applying for financial aid, the CSS profile, the FAFSA forms, whenever they're due by the school. Make sure you're not missing those deadlines. You know, award letters are going to start as early as December, especially if you're like early decision, like UM, I'll show you, we have a lot of different ways to apply for admission. December, March, make sure if the schools are asking for tax records, supplemental information about the household, anything. Make sure that the students are monitoring their portals and turning the documents right away. You, as parents, are going to have to, in the summer, after you deposited at the school of choice, have to submit Florida residency verification documents. If you go into a state school, that happens every single year. At UM, it happens once and it's on autopilot for all 4 years. Varies from school to school. If you do need loans, that will happen in the summer. You would apply for the loans in the summer and talk to the school about how to do so. And don't miss out on any kind of tuition deadlines. If the tuition deadline is August 1st, July 15th, whatever it is, if a student doesn't meet a deadline, they could lose their housing, they could lose their preferred schedule, they could lose their spot in the class. And you don't want any of that to happen. So those are critically important. And yes, sorry, you do have to reapply for financial aid each year when it comes to need-based aid, not when it comes to merit awards. Deadline, this is us. This is UM. If
If you're interested, this is an example of what schools do. We have early decision and early action are our earliest application pool. These are the people who are highly committed to us. Early decision 1 is the binding contract one. You sign a contract with us, signed by your the guidance office of the students, college advising office of the students, understanding that if you get accepted to UM, I'm going to UM regardless of finances. And I did say that, yes, regardless of finances. It varies from school to school. Our vice president of admissions and enrollment management says it all the time. I pair up with them in presentations. He's like, if you're needing to figure out the finances at UM, you don't apply early decision 1, you apply early action. This gives you an opportunity to compare schools, but you're still part of our early application pool. And every school is different. This is just an example of UM. This is when the common application is due. This is when the CSS profile and tax returns are due. This is when the FAFSA is due. And this is when you find out about your acceptance and awards at UM. This is all on our website as well. All right? This varies from school to school. You want to do your research. All of these application types meet 100% of need. All of these application types we consider for merit awards, no matter how you apply for division. You're still being considered for merit awards. And with that being said, if your students do become Canes, you got to understand we have a money management program. Our motto is advancing personal finance education one student at a time. And we have something called the Money Talk series. All of our programming, we have peer-to-peer counseling, is all offered for free to all of our Canes. And I ask students all the time, and I ask you, this is a quote from this guy. I like it. You know, making money doesn't make you financially successful. Knowing what to do with it before you start making it and acting on the knowledge you gain is the true key to a student's long-term financial success. Would you agree with that? Yes, of course, money is good, making it is good, but investing it young, opening up that Roth IRA when they're young, having that stream of tax-free income later on, make sure they're doing the matching money with their 401k, 403b, or 457 plan when they start their career. Start investing the right way. Have a diversified portfolio. All the things you know, we teach. All right? And we push them to act on the knowledge that they gain. Don't forget, there are net price calculators that are out there for every school. They're not accurate right now. Honestly, with the FAFSA changes, they are not, for most schools, 100% accurate. So they give you a very rough estimation as to whether or not you might qualify for some financial aid at the school of choice. They are being updated with the new FAFSA rules, new FAFSA calculations, once we get them. We haven't even gotten them yet. All right, so these are rough estimators to determine whether or not you possibly could qualify for some financial aid, and every school has it. All right, homework assignments. Find out what applications are due. Make sure you meet the deadlines. Beat the deadlines for outside scholarships. Visit each school's net price calculator to get a rough estimate. Schedule your college visits. Get the students working on their part-time job of scholarship research. Try to figure out how to apply for loans if you absolutely need them. Take college billing deadlines seriously. Start learning about personal finance. They can start learning, reading books. You know, number one rule, we all love Amazon, right? Click, 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 and the box shows up, and I smile. That's great. But you gotta learn, especially at the youngest of ages, to avoid emotional spending. Keep that in the back of your mind. That's one of the key points to being successful financially, is to do that. And that works with investing and everything else. And I want to thank you so much for your time. Did anybody here learn nothing? My job is done. Thank you so much for being here. I apologize. You can come down, or you have a general question I can answer right now. Yes, you first.
So if you have the Florida prepaid, that covers the 220.
Yep, 211,
But
something right.
UN credits are not.
No, we're like 2,000.
Right. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
They pay to us the $6,000 per year.
And you still have to pay the rest, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
That would be wonderful if they would pay for all of tuition at UM. But no, they only pay to us what they would have paid had the student.
Keep that
that's
camera
how
on
it
there.
is. And then you
Yo,
go and
get set up another camera on the tripod.
Yeah, the ease of Florida could help that up to
Interviews.
3,500, any other outside scholarships, any merit awards they get from the university.
We need a student interview and a parent interview.
So I
Come
had
on then.
questions that, a few questions that were submitted prior,
can't use both
for those that didn't,
Well, we
or
get
able to
the student
attend.
and the
So
parent.
number one is, what is the correlation between expected value contribution and financial aid, and which year is affected by this for the class of '24?
2022 taxes are used for the class of 2024. And again, it's not called expected family contribution anymore on the FAFSA, it's called the student aid index. And I don't know how it's calculated in relation to, oh, if I make this much, will I qualify for this? They actually have to go through the FAFSA process. And if your students are looking to apply for a summer program at the school of choice, sometimes that happens. They might have early programs and you want to apply for need-based aid for that. You can even do this year's FAFSA to see what your expected family contribution is. If they don't go anywhere that uses this year's FAFSA, it's not going to serve any purpose other than you figuring out what the expected family contribution might be for yourself on the FAFSA form for the year that we're in right now.
Thank you. And how important is the tax declaration for the financial aid assessment?
Tax declaration.
Yeah.
It's not called, it's called providing consent to access the IRS data. And it's a huge portion of what they use. That's the first thing that they look at is they look at your income. Then they look at your household size. And they look at your business values. They look at your assets. One thing about the FAFSA, it doesn't look at your primary residence at all. It does look at business and assets and things like that. CSS profile application does look at your primary residence. Your primary residence can be worth up to $15, and if you're at a FAFSA-only school, it'll never be seen or looked at, so keep that in mind. But they start with your income.
And the last one that I have here, if a student, for example, is a senior this year, is about to graduate,
Yep.
2024, and they are applying for the summer term
Yep.
at an institution, do they have to complete this year, the current FAFSA that we have right now for summer funding, as well as the new one coming out in December for the new budget academic year in the fall of
Yes,
2024?
in most cases, yes. You have to check with the school, like the schools they're applying to make sure that they're offering aid for the summer and that they're going to be taking enough credits in whatever classes they're taking in the summer to be eligible for financial aid. But yeah, a lot of schools do that. They use this year's FAFSA for the summer of 2024, and for the fall of 2024, they use the 24-25 academic year FAFSA. If they do the one for this academic year, it's going to be using your 2021 income for the summer only. All right, for the fall and spring of next academic year, it's going to be using your 2022 income for that form that only is available in December. The one for 23-24, this academic year is available right now. You know, we're right in the middle of the academic year. Any other questions from anybody else? If you do have an individualized question for me and you want to just ask me not in an open format, come on down. I am here, or we can meet outside and talk about that. But thank you all for being here. Did you find this to be helpful? Yes. Excellent.
Whatever, it's fine. Stop recording, Mark. I don't have to work.
So you're not married.
Guys, why do you treat yourself like